First of all, I would like to thank Commander Watson and friends in the Chennai Center for China Studies and the Tibet Policy Institute for organizing the film screening and discussion on Tibet in Chennai. Whenever the name Chennai comes to me, it brings back good old memories of my college days in Madras Christian College and Loyola College. The Tibetan students, though we were small in numbers, were always ready to spread words about Tibet in the college campuses to garner support and solidarity for a Tibet cause. As you are aware, South India is distant away from Tibet, though India is our immediate neighbor, connecting through Himalayan ranges. More than a neighbor, we Tibetans consider India as our guru since the time when Buddhism was introduced into Tibet in 7th century. Indians somehow consider Tibet as Arya Bhumi, and Kailash Parvat, which is in Tibet, is known as Lord Shiva's abode, sacred to Hindus. Tibetans in reciprocity also calls India as Arya Bhumi. Geographically, Tibet was a landlocked country in Asia sandwiched between India and China. During the 19th and early 20th century, the colonial powers regarded Tibet as the buffer state. We Tibetans call it the land of snow. Scientists and environmentally conscious people call it the third pole, water tower of Asia, and rainmakers of Asia. Irrespective of different jargons, this vast land, which spread over 2.5 million square kilometers, is widely known as the roof of the world. Tibet is the source of Asia's 10 largest rivers like Indus, Satluj, Brahmaputra, Salween, Mekong, Yangtze, Yellow, and Irrawaddy. And these rivers are lifeline of over 1.9 billion people in India, China, and Southeast Asia. Tibet is also home to over 46,000 glaciers. It is also estimated that over 3 billion people are consuming foods produced along the basins of the rivers that originates from Tibet. Due to the global warming and the climate change, Tibet's temperature is rising twice more than the global average. Because of it, there is a serious ecological threat to the wider world in the immediate and the distant future. If the temperature continues to rise in Tibet, then in the near future, glaciers will retreat, which will cause floods, mudslides, and landslides, which has become a new normal for Tibet and the lower riparian countries. If the world and China in particular do not regulate and revitalize the deteriorating ecological stature of Tibet's plateau, Tibet will neither be in a position thereafter to quench the thirst of billions of people, nor will help foster the rains required for the Indian subcontinent. We are ringing the alarm bell, and the clock of uncertainty pertaining to severe global food security is ticking, and we do not have the luxury of being complacent to resolve it in future. India must pay considerable attention to the Tibet's ecology before we all are forced to pay a heavy price in the future. The immediate call for action is needed. As we are facing transnational and transregional challenges due to the ecological disturbances inside Tibet, India's challenge could also be a global challenge. China had once put an infrastructural feat of building a mega dam on Yangtze. Now, with the super dam on Yalungtsangpo River, it triggers massive ecological disasters, and it is a cause of concern for all of us. As a global citizen and a Tibetan, it is essential to inform and create an awareness about Tibet's ecology. Because of Tibet's elevated topography, Tibet plays a significant strategical role and still plays an eminent role between India and China. The mighty Himalayas stretching through Ladakh in the west to Arunachal in east, covering 3,488 kilometers, used to be known as the world's highest physical barrier between Tibet and India. After China invaded Tibet in 1949 and later occupied Tibet in 1959, the geopolitical contour of Asia and the world was altered. Since Tibet shares southern borders with India, Nepal, Bhutan, and Myanmar, China has a direct access to strategically important areas of Central and Southern Asian region. The regional stability and peace in Asia is largely disturbed. India and China had war in 1962 along the India-Tibet border, and since then the Himalayan borders have become heavily militarized with the continued tension between China and India. His Holiness the Dalai Lama called upon China to demilitarize the Tibetan plateau over numerous occasions. Historically, Tibet and China fought many wars as Tibet was a warrior state, expanding its empire far and wide in the East and Central Asia during the 7th and 8th century. The consecutive wars led to the mutual consensus to coexist, which culminated into a formal peace treaty between Tibet and China. It can be seen even today on the historical pillar of 821 to 823 AD, which clearly stated Tibetans shall be happy in Tibet and Chinese shall be happy in China. Regardless of such past agreements, the Communist China brutally occupied Tibet, which resulted in the deaths of over 1 million Tibetans and the destruction of over 6,000 monasteries. During those atrocious times, hundreds of thousands of Tibetans sacrificed their sacred lives to defend their country. Since then, the Tibetans are deprived of self-determination. With the violation of fundamental human rights, Tibet's distinct cultural and religious life are in the verge of extermination. Even after more than 70 years, Chinese leaders are steadfastly following their heartland policies in Tibet by annihilating and exterminating Tibet's language and culture, thereby uprooting Tibet's national identity. Tibetans are marginalized and Tibetan ecology are exploited at the cost of China's vast development. Currently, Tibet has become an surveillance state with the collection of mass DNA sampling through a coercive measure. There is also a prevalence of colonial boarding schools in Tibet. There is predominantly and excessive violations of fundamental human rights concerning freedom of movement, expression, and religious freedom inside Tibet. We are facing an existential threat from China's belligerent policies inside Tibet. Despite signing and ratifying international conventions for the preservation of human rights and values, Tibetans are suffering behind the Iron Curtain. However, the world largely remains a mere spectator to China's ill-will policies of subjugation and tyranny over Tibet. We Tibetans are ever grateful to the support and solidarities of the Indian government and the masses for being the perfect host for the Tibetan refugees. Indian Solidarities for Tibet was initially formed since 1959, spearheaded by Lok Nayak J. Prakash Narayan in Calcutta. Considering our long association of Guru-Chela relationship between Indians and Tibetans, and the historical, cultural, spiritual, and societal relationship throughout human civilization, India till date has done the best India could do to support Tibet. In other words, Guru-Chela relationship in true words and practice. However, for India's own interest, Tibet matters, and resolving the Sino-Tibetan conflict will certainly pave a way for brighter and better future for India, China, Tibet, and the rest of the world. We are living with hope based on truth and non-violence. With the strength of our national identity, for so long, the international communities have supported the Tibetan movement, which shall not be counted as pro-Tibet, rather as pro-justice. So, fulfilling the aspirations of 6 million Tibetans, the middle way policy of the Central Tibetan Administration consistently seeks a mutually beneficial solution for both Tibetan and Chinese in the future. May truth prevail. Thank you so much.